In the shadows of our society, a brilliant mind twisted by isolation and obsession gave rise to one of the most notorious figures of 20th century America, the Unabomber. Emerging from a seemingly ordinary background was Theodore Kaczynski. A child prodigy, Ted was a mathematical genius who entered Harvard University at the tender age of 16. Here, he was exposed to a world that was as intellectually stimulating as it was emotionally challenging. But beneath the prestigious halls of Harvard lurked a darker underbelly. Unbeknownst to young Ted, he was subjected to insidious psychological experiments, a harrowing ordeal that would leave lasting scars on his psyche. His journey from a promising academic to a reclusive hermit was as baffling as it was tragic. The transformation of this gifted mind, tormented by a world it could not reconcile with, would set the stage for a chilling saga. This was the beginning of a haunting journey that would forever imprint the name Unabomber in our collective memories. As Kaczynski retreated to a life of solitude in the Montana wilderness, a sinister plan started to take form. In the late 70s, a series of bombings began to shake the nation. The first, in May of 1978, marked the start of an onslaught that would span nearly 2 decades. These weren't random acts of violence. Each attack was meticulously planned, targeting people involved in technological development or the advancement of modern society. The victims were diverse: university professors, computer store owners, airline officials, and advertising executives. All were unsuspecting pawns in a deadly game orchestrated by a man they had never met. The bombings were not just acts of violence, but messages, an outcry against the rapid advancement of technology and its perceived threat to human freedom. As the bombings continued, the nation was gripped with fear. No one knew who would be next or why they were targeted. The only common thread was a connection to technology, a fact that only fueled the public's growing anxiety about the digital age. Amidst this chaos, a manifesto appeared. Penned by the bomber himself, it was a vitriolic diatribe against the ills of modern society. It was a call to arms, a demand for revolution, a plea for a return to a simpler, pre-industrial world. The bomber, dubbed the Unabomber by the media, made a chilling demand: publish the manifesto or the bombings would continue. The manifesto, entitled Industrial Society and Its Future, was a chilling insight into the mind of the Unabomber. It outlined his belief that the Industrial Revolution and its consequences had been a disaster for the human race. It called for a return to primitive ways and the destruction of the industrial technological system. This was not just the ramblings of a madman, but a calculated attempt to spread his ideology and justify his actions. A reign of terror that lasted nearly 2 decades, causing death, destruction, and a nation living in fear. In the end, it was not the FBI's profiling or the extensive manhunt that led to the Unabomber's capture. It was a brother's love, a moral quandary, and a decision that changed the course of history. David Kaczynski, Ted's younger brother, found himself in an unimaginable predicament. As he read the Unabomber's manifesto published in the New York Times, he recognized a disconcerting familiarity in the language and ideas. They mirrored the letters and documents his brother Ted had written. For David, the realization was gut-wrenching. Could his own flesh and blood be the notorious Unabomber, the man responsible for a reign of terror that spanned nearly 2 decades? It was a chilling thought, one fraught with moral and ethical implications. David loved his brother, but he also understood the magnitude of the crimes committed. Lives had been lost, families torn apart, and a nation lived in fear. In the end, it was not a decision made lightly. David grappled with the potential consequences. If he was wrong, he risked destroying his relationship with his brother, possibly forever. If he was right, he would be turning in a family member, a man he had shared his childhood with, to face a life behind bars, or possibly even the death penalty. With the weight of the world on his shoulders, David made a choice. He chose justice over blood ties, peace over familial loyalty. He contacted the authorities, providing them with the evidence they needed to zero in on Ted Kaczynski. It was a courageous act, one that brought an end to the Unabomber's reign of terror, but at a personal cost that is unimaginable to most of us. David's decision not only led to his brother's arrest, but also marked the beginning of a new chapter in his own life. A chapter filled with guilt, sorrow, but also relief. A chapter that would forever link his name with one of the most notorious criminals in American history. A brother's courage, a family's heartbreak, and the end of a reign of terror. The Unabomber's tale is as much about the courage of a brother as it is about the cold calculations of a killer. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, may be behind bars, but his haunting legacy lingers on. This man's actions sent tremors through society, forever altering the way we perceive safety and security in our everyday lives. The Unabomber's reign of terror spanned nearly 2 decades, and in its wake, he left a chilling impact. His actions contributed significantly to the rise of domestic terrorism in the United States. His meticulous planning and execution of his attacks sent a clear message that terror could be homegrown, springing not from distant lands, but from our own backyards. This realization was a hard pill for society to swallow, and it fundamentally shifted the way we view and respond to threats of violence. Perhaps one of the most tangible legacies of the Unabomber is the change in mail screening procedures. Before Kaczynski, receiving a package was a mundane affair, often filled with excitement or anticipation. The Unabomber, however, transformed packages into potential death traps, sparking widespread paranoia and fear. In response, both public and private institutions implemented rigorous screening processes for mail and packages, an enduring reminder of the Unabomber's reign of terror. After evading capture for so long, Ted Kaczynski was finally brought to justice. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a testament to the gravity of his crimes. Yet, even behind bars, the spectre of the Unabomber continues to haunt us. His manifesto, though deranged, continues to circulate on the fringes of society, a dark testament to the power of ideas, however twisted they may be. A tale of brilliance turned to madness, the Unabomber's story serves as a chilling reminder of the dark corners of the human mind. It's a stark warning of what can happen when intelligence and isolation intertwine, resulting in a deadly cocktail of terror and destruction. The legacy of the Unabomber lives on, a grim reminder of a chapter in our history that we would rather forget, but must not.